Welcome to A Happy Life, a podcast dedicated to providing science-based education and tools for adding more happiness to your life. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Joshua Swift, professor of psychology at Idaho State University, licensed clinical psychologist, and author of Becoming Happy, a guide to self-care and holistic well-being. On today's episode, we are going to talk about mindfulness, what it is and is not, as well as some of the happiness benefits that can come from it. I will also share some suggestions for those who would like to engage in more mindfulness in their lives. But before we get started, let me just remind you to hit subscribe or follow below so you never miss any of our future episodes. And please share with others. So, what exactly is mindfulness? Although this practice has become extremely popular in recent years, I don't think many people actually understand what it entails. And I think this is partially because it has become so trendy. As a result of its popularity, there are many online influencers and celebrities who talk about it and give descriptions of it, even though they don't really know what it means. So it ends up getting reduced to a stereotype of someone sitting with their legs crossed and their hands resting in their laps. Now, this image is really a presentation of one style of meditation. And although meditation can be a useful tool to help someone learn how to be mindful, mindfulness is so much more than that. And it doesn't even have to include meditation at all. I think one of the best definitions of mindfulness comes from Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is considered to be the scientist responsible for bringing mindfulness into the context of Western medicine. According to Kabat-Zinn, mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment by moment. In other words, mindfulness is about being fully present in the moment and accepting and allowing our experience to be whatever it may be without judging or controlling it. So you can be mindful when you are meditating or practicing yoga, but you can also be mindful while you are cooking, driving in a car, doing household jobs, playing with a pet, reading books to your children, or even when you're listening to this podcast. Whatever the situation is, if you are present in the moment, paying attention to and engaging in your experiences without judging them or wanting them to be something else, then you are being mindful. Now, although you have likely had moments of mindfulness in your life, this state of being is usually not our norm. Our brains like to be very active, and it has been estimated that the average person has more than 6,000 thoughts per day. That is about one new thought every 10 seconds. On top of having all of these thoughts, our brain has to take in and process information from our senses and control the functioning of the rest of our body. And in order to get all of this done, we typically engage in a form of mental multitasking. Now, often as we do this, we can get caught up in our thoughts with little to no awareness of what we are actually doing. Maybe you've had times when you found that you've arrived at your destination in your car without recognizing how you actually got there. Or you've read several pages of a book without having any idea what was said on them. Or maybe you've had to ask someone to repeat themselves because you were so caught up in other thoughts rather than paying attention to the conversation. Now, although this type of mental multitasking can sometimes be necessary, when we engage in it too much, it can rob us of the experience of happiness. As a personal example of this, I've noticed that how much I enjoy putting my children to bed is directly tied to how mindful I am while doing it. So in our house, we have a routine of doing a brief check-in, singing a song, and saying good night to each of our 6 children when it's time for bed. Now, sometimes when I'm tired or stressed, I'm not really present in the process. I might be thinking about events from earlier in the day or about my plans for once all of the children are asleep. And when this happens, putting them to bed becomes a task that I just try to rush through. In contrast, when I try to be mindful, then I am able to fully experience this time with my children. And it ends up being one of my favorite periods of each day. Now, just in the last 2 decades alone, tens of thousands of studies have been conducted examining the physical and mental health benefits of practicing mindfulness. In the physical realm, meta-analyses and systematic reviews have shown that mindfulness can lead to improved outcomes for pain, colds, irritable bowel syndrome, diabetes, HIV, high blood pressure, and age-related memory loss. In terms of our mental health, meta-analyses have shown that mindfulness can lead to reductions in anxiety, depression, anger, PTSD symptoms, and just general psychological distress. And several studies have also specifically linked the practice of mindfulness to happiness, life satisfaction, and subjective well-being. Now, the studies that have shown these benefits have not only been correlational, suggesting an association, but also experimental, indicating that mindfulness can directly cause these positive effects. And the benefits can be seen immediately after practicing mindfulness, but also years down the road. Now, it is thought that mindfulness is so effective in producing these varied results because it minimizes our body's response to stress. When we experience stress, our adrenal glands release cortisol, which is often referred to as our stress hormone. The cortisol, in combination with adrenaline, helps us stay alert and vigilant to any threats that may be out there. That way, we can be ready to respond when it's needed. After the threat is over, our cortisol returns to normal levels. Now, while this natural reaction has short-term benefits, when cortisol is frequently elevated or it stays raised for sustained periods of time due to constant stress, it can cause several negative long-term consequences, including weight gain, digestive problems, heart disease, headaches, anxiety, depression, and even dementia. Now, fortunately, the practice of mindfulness has been shown to reduce our response to stress through minimizing the levels of cortisol in our bodies. Thus, consistent practice of mindfulness can help prevent the negative consequences that elevated cortisol can cause. Further, MRI research has shown that the practice of mindfulness can lead to gray matter reductions in the brain's amygdala, which is a part of the brain that processes stress. And it can lead to gray matter thickening in the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for problem solving and emotional control. Thus, when we're mindful, our brains are able to do a better job at making decisions that would lead to less stress. And when the stress does occur, they do a better job at ignoring or managing it. So there are clear benefits that come from being mindful, but how exactly do we do it? First, try to increase your presence in individual moments throughout the day. This can be done by picking some activities each day where you focus on doing them and nothing else. Maybe classes you are taking or meetings you attend at work, or perhaps eating your meals or having conversations with others, or even going on a walk or just some other type of physical activity. Just like my experience with putting my children to bed, as you pay more attention to your experiences during these activities, you'll find that you enjoy them much more and they become more meaningful to you. Now, it can also be done by removing distractions that take you out of the moment. Personally, I choose not to have a cell phone. I did have one for a couple of years in my early 20s. At that time, I would often get calls or texts when I was in class or out on a date, maybe doing homework or playing a sport with some friends. And even if I didn't respond to those calls and texts, they would take me out of the positive moment that I was in. And even when a call or text wasn't coming in, just because I had the phone, I found that my mind would often wander over to it, wondering if I missed a call or thinking about something I could possibly look up with it. And so, to help me be more present, I've chosen to completely avoid having that distraction in my life. Other distractions that you could consider removing, either completely or from particular times of the day, include having music, TV shows, or other programs playing nonstop in the background, receiving and checking email, social media, or other electronic notifications, and even wearing a watch if you're constantly rushed or worried about time. The benefits of being present throughout the day and removing distractions has been shown in multiple research studies. For example, this research has shown that multitasking, especially tech multitasking, disrupts the memory and learning process in our brains. Our brains can only hold and manipulate a small amount of information at any given time. This is all done within our working memory. Once our brains are done processing information in our working memory, they can either forget it when it's no longer needed or send it to our long term memory for later retrieval. But when we multitask, even if it's just through unintentional notifications, we cause our brains to completely let go of the information that was in our working memory and focus on something else instead. So when we then want to go back to the thing we were focused on before, it takes our brains a while to get back into it. Also, dropping our focus on one thing and switching it to another disrupts the long-term memory storage process. Thus, multitasking has been shown to lead to an overall loss in productivity. In contrast, when we focus on being present with one thing at a time, we can be more productive and experience a number of other diverse benefits. As an example, in my research lab, we've tested this through several studies aimed at improving the effectiveness of mental health therapists. In one of these studies, we randomized therapists into either a condition where they were trained through mindfulness how to be present or a control condition. And then after 5 weeks of training, we had clients rate the psychotherapy sessions that they received from these therapists. Without knowing anything about the purpose of the study, the clients who received the treatment from the present trained therapist rated their sessions as being more effective than those seen by the control therapist. We then provided the same training to the therapist who had originally been in the control group. After that, their clients rated the sessions at a similarly positive level. In another study, we had therapists either engage in a mindful centering task right before their therapy sessions or engage in some other distraction task, like checking their email or talking to a peer or going to the bathroom. No matter who the therapist was, if the sessions were preceded by a centering task designed to increase presence, the clients rated them as being more effective than the ones preceded by the distraction tasks. Again, the clients in this study were unaware of the pre-session assignment. Now, thinking specifically about happiness, a few years back, researchers out of Harvard collected data from 2,250 participants regarding their thoughts, feelings, and actions at arbitrary times throughout the day. Specifically, using a cell phone app, participants would receive a random notification prompting them to immediately report what they were doing, if they were thinking about that thing or something else, and how happy they were. Now, nearly 50% of the time, what the participants were doing and what they were thinking about did not match up. They referred to this as mind wandering, but it is also a very clear example of not being present. They further found that while only 4.6% of the participants' happiness was attributed to the specific activity that they were engaged in, 10.8% was attributed to whether or not they were present at that moment. Interestingly, even when people were doing the activities that they reported were least enjoyable, they were happier doing them if they were present rather than thinking about something else. In addition to increasing moments of presence, one can practice mindfulness by taking an observer stance of thoughts and experiences. This means that we accept and allow our thoughts and experiences without any judgment of them. I mentioned in a previous podcast that there are 3 general methods for addressing depressive or anxiety-provoking thoughts. In that episode, I discussed 2 of them: directly challenging the thoughts through cognitive restructuring and engaging in positive thinking practices. Now, both of those methods have been found to be effective. But a third method, which has also been shown to be highly effective, is just to non-judgmentally accept and allow those thoughts to be. Oftentimes, our experiences of anxiety, depression, and distress come not just from the thoughts we have, but also from our evaluation of those thoughts. I think a good analogy for this is getting a car stuck in the mud. When that happens, we have 2 options. We can fight it and think, how can I be stuck in the mud? And why did this have to happen to me? But all fighting does is produce anger or depression. It doesn't get you out of the mud. Instead, we can accept the fact that we are stuck and then just move forward, figuring out what we have to do to get out. Now, the same process can also play out with our thoughts. If we are constantly stuck fighting them, thinking, oh no, how can I be depressed again? Or why do I have to feel this way all of the time? Then we will usually just feel more of the depression or anxiety. On the other hand, mindfulness encourages us to just non-judgmentally allow the thoughts to be there. Once we do that, we can step back from them a bit and decide how we want to act, regardless of what our thoughts might be. And let me give a couple more examples of this. I remember helping one of my previous clients with depression come up with a list of pleasurable activities that she could engage in her life. She shared that when she was growing up, swimming had brought her a lot of joy, but she hadn't done it for years. When I asked why, she shared that she was worried that people at the pool would point at her and say negative things about her because of her weight. Now, I immediately felt like those worries fell into the cognitive distortion categories of fortune telling and mind reading. But as we tried to challenge them, she shared about several instances where that had actually happened. In fact, it happened more times than not. So instead, we switched to adopt an acceptance approach. When that specific worry came, she was to step back from it and say to herself, okay, there's that thought, but do I want to act based on that thought and what others might do? Or do I want to act based on my values and what I enjoy? And as she accepted and allowed that thought, it no longer had power over her. Second example. When I was a teenager, I had sweaty hands and I hated it. When I'd do my schoolwork, my hands would start to sweat and my paper would get all wet. And I always worried about what my teachers would think when I turned in a wet paper to them. When I'd go out on a date and I wanted to hold a girl's hand, I would think that she'd be grossed out by how sweaty my hands were. And whenever I had to meet someone new and shake their hand, I think that they would believe I was nervous because my hands were sweaty, and then they'd not want to get to know me as a result. So, on top of all those worries, anytime my hands started to sweat, even a little, I would start to think, why does this happen to me? This is so horrible. And why doesn't it just stop? As a result of all this fighting against my sweaty hands, they only got sweatier until one day I decided to just accept that I have sweaty hands. So when they'd start to sweat, I would still notice it, but I would just think to myself, oh, my hands are sweaty. I even remember one time trying to make a game out of it and thinking to myself, let's see how sweaty I can make my hands. And I didn't let my sweaty hands stop me from doing the things I wanted. And guess what? Once I changed my attitude to a more accepting and allowing one, my hands stopped sweating so much. The fighting is what actually gave the sweaty hands more power. So we can learn to treat our thoughts and emotions in a similar manner. We are all going to feel sad at times, and we are all going to occasionally have depressive or anxiety-provoking thoughts. If we accept and allow those emotions and thoughts to be there, and instead act based on our values and desires to be happy, then we take away their power, and in turn, we can actually decrease their occurrence. There was an interesting study conducted a few years back where the researchers randomized clients to either an experimental condition where they participated in a 10-minute guided mindful breathing exercise, or a control condition where they were told to let their mind wander for 10 minutes. Participants were then presented with positive and negative images, such as a smiling couple, a positive one, or a dead cat, a negative one. And then after each image, participants were given 20 seconds to write down all of the thoughts that came to their mind. Now, although the number of positive thoughts reported was similar between both groups, those in the mindfulness group reported significantly fewer negative thoughts and significantly more neutral thoughts. Because they were better at allowing and accepting, the negative thoughts just didn't come up as much. And when they did arise, they didn't waste their time ruminating on them. Now, the goal with mindfulness is to learn how to live in the present moment with a non-judgmental attitude of acceptance toward our thoughts and experiences all of the time. But this can sometimes be hard to achieve. So many have recommended cultivating this ability through formal practices. This is where the mindful meditation comes in. Sitting down for 30 minutes or even just 5 minutes per day and observing your breath or your physical sensations or maybe your thoughts can help you learn how to observe your thoughts and experiences in a non-judgmental, accepting way at other times in your life. And simple centering exercises can help you learn how to live your life in the present moment. Now, typically, when one starts to work on these skills, guided exercises can be very helpful. And I've uploaded a few 5-minute ones that I've created to my YouTube channel that can be used for daily practices if you want. With consistent practice with these types of guided exercises, over time, it can become easier to display the traits of mindfulness all on your own. Now, in addition to the formal meditation, you can do mindfulness practices as you, say, brush your teeth each morning, savor a favorite food, take a walk, do a household chore, or any other small everyday task. To do this, you just pay attention to the experience right then, in the moment, and nothing else. If your mind does start to think about other things, gently bring it back to the activity that you are doing and the sensations that you are experiencing from it. And these types of practices with small activities can help you learn how to be present and in the moment for the bigger, more important ones. Well, thank you for joining us today on A Happy Life. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or follow below to receive notification for all of our future episodes. And please share with others. Take care until next time.